There we go.
Good.
Mr. Tom Maker, the first angling guest I have on the podcast or related to the angling industry.
Yeah.
Well, I'm lucky enough to have quite a lot of subscribers on my channel in that element, and they love their fishing. And I'm sure that a question has gone through every single one of their minds, which is how on earth do I turn my favourite hobby, the thing that I spend all my time watching on YouTube, my weekends, all the rest of it, into something that can actually pay for me to live and survive and enjoy doing what I'm doing in the day. And that is exactly what you've done. But I think to get a grasp on how the hell you've done that and got to where you are today with arguably one of the most recognisable and famous anglers in the UK, sponsored by some of the biggest brands. We'll go into how that kind of works or parts of how that works and how you can do that. But when did you get into angling? What was life like growing up?
So it was my old man's always fished. So obviously I used to live back in Kent. I now live away from Kent, but I used to live back in Kent with my parents. My old man fished. It was all he ever did. So when I was really young, it was like Dad's going away fishing for the weekend. And it was just a natural progression. It was, Dad, can I go fishing with you? And we had a little lake over, we used to live in, like I say, in Kent, but down the road in Gravesend, we had a place, we called it the Eurolite Factory. It was basically a lake off of the back of a train station or a train track. But it was a private lake. We knew all the people that fished there, and it was like, Dad, I fancy going fishing. So he turned around and said, well, yep, I've got no problem taking you. It gets you out of the house, blah, blah, blah. But what I'm saying to you is you're not carp fishing straight away. Which, to be honest, looking back now, is probably the best thing that's ever happened. So I used to go down, and I'll always remember it. Dad used to have his 2 rods out, and I used to sit there with a little whip or a little float rod, and I used to fill his landing net out with like umpteenth amounts of rudd and roach, and he would catch a carp, and there'd be that many in there that he couldn't even net the fish. So this went on and on for probably, I'd say, a good sort of year, maybe 14 months, and it was Christmas, and he bought me my first carp setup, and I can still remember exactly what he bought. And if I ever saw a set of these rods come up for sale, I would buy them just for the pure sake of the fact that I've got them. And they were Enticer carp rods, and they used to be, you know what the old school rods were like? They were like they were more like shiny black back in the day. Probably a lot more fiberglass in them than what there was carbon. And they had big blue writing on them, and I had the little Shimano bait runners with like the double handles on them, and I thought I was the boy. And I used to spend ages and ages and ages casting a small little lead, practicing casting. Like, and even, you know, looking back now, it probably hindered Dad's chances of catching massively. But until I was competent and I was confident, then he wouldn't actually let me fish. So
and how old were you there?
So that would have been, well, I know when I caught my first carp, and that was the 7th of April 2000, because I write everything down. Quite sad, I know, but then I think if you're going to invest your time into something, you need stuff to look back on, because you never know what's going to happen in the future, which is a position that I'm obviously sitting in now. So I've got
I was
a lot.
2 years old then.
Yeah. So what's that? 2000, so 23 years ago. So I'd have been 7 or 8. So I'm 31 now. Yeah. So it was a long time ago. And my first ever carp weighed £7.10, and it was a common. And I remember catching it, and, you know, I was sat there and I got my Le Shark jumper on and my Adidas trousers on, which is what, like, every kid that age used to wear. And I'm like bear hugging this 7-pounder. And ever since then, it was just like, I just always wanted to go. And then we fished there for quite a while. And there was, I mean, looking back now, 2 anglers nowadays, a £20 fish is £20 fish. They're so widely available everywhere.
Inflation of fish.
Yeah, there are. And if you speak to people nowadays, and they could be 6, 8, 10, 12, 18 years old, what's your PB? Oh, £30 this, £40 that. But back in them days, a 20-pounder was massive. So this particular lake that we fished only held about 3 or 4 20s. Now,
yeah, that even sounds a little bit like when I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
But that's what carp fishing was like back then. But everything has a natural progression, and I won't. You know, that is life. That's just life. So I caught one of these 20-pounders, and it was like 21 and a little bit. It was a fish called veins, and it basically had like a real sort of heavy patch of veins on the side of its body. Obviously, it was called veins. Yeah. Dad's like, I wouldn't expect to catch another 20 for a very long time. There's not that many in it. Anyway, after that, I caught another 2 out of there, and that was pretty much it. And that was where it all really started. And then, obviously, for Dad, it was a great getaway, not get away from Mum, but it was a great, Tom wants to go fishing now.
So was your dad in the angling industry?
So Dad's never been involved in the industry as such. My dad's always been a roof tiler. He's a roof tiler and a leadwork specialist, and that's all he's ever done. He left school with very good grades, and he got a job when he was, I think it was 15 or 16 in the half term, and he's done that ever since. So my dad has never had a full-time job or a paid job within the angling industry. So it was obviously a very good reason for him to then go fishing more. So off the back of that, it was then a natural progression. We lived down in Kent. We had very good access to fishing places like Mid-Kent Fisheries, Chilham Mill, Stour, the Handle, and we also spent a lot of time fishing on Walthamstow as well. So that was how I got into it and how I started carp fishing. But how I got into the next stage of it was through my dad and the competition fishing. And I will say before we go any further, I would not be here without my dad giving me the opportunities to go fishing as much as what I did. There's a lot of kids about.
Yeah, I get that.
You know, there's a lot of kids about that I know, that you know, that when we were growing up, whose parents didn't necessarily fish. And if your parents can't take you as much, the ones that are going a lot more have always got a better advantage of progressing further.
I think that's bang on. My dad used to, if he couldn't take me for work or whatever, my mum just stepped in, and knowing now that she doesn't even like driving 5 miles away from home, and she'd take me anywhere. I remember when I was sort of 12, 13 years old, and you had to be, I think it was 16 on linear to not be accompanied by an adult or anything. And I think in the end I just started going and there was no kind of problem. But I remember she slept in the car park one night. And I think I probably could have gone somewhere with fishing, but I don't know, I just drifted off for me a little bit. But it is coming back now. But it never seemed to do that for you.
No, I never. It's hard to explain. You never expect to be able to sit in the position that I'm sitting in now. Looking back all them years ago, did I ever think that this would ever happen? When me and Dad used to walk around, prime example, we fished Walthamstow for years, and that was days only. Now, what the thing is nowadays is what people don't see is life before social media. So they think that not that they think that I've only just started fishing, but I've fished for a very, very long time. And the hours that my dad spent, we would fish Walthamstow 50 plus weekends a year. The only ones we'd normally miss would be Christmas, New Year, or if there was something going on over a weekend. And we used to leave our house at 2 o'clock in the morning. We used to sleep on the gate outside Walthamstow reservoirs. I don't know if you've ever been there, but obviously if people are listening, they would know what it is. You're on Tottenham High Road. You're on the side of a bus lane. And at the time I would have been probably 11, I reckon, 10, 11 or 12. And we used to get there. I used to spend all day, and I used to be so bored because I was there for Dad, but at the same time I wanted to learn how to fish. And mate, and I remember so many things about what I used to do. I used to get patches of dry grass. I used to set them on fire and cook digestive biscuits. I used to eat 5-pot noodles a day because I was going fishing with Dad, and obviously Dad wanted me to stay there. But I never started fishing Walthamstow the minute Dad did, because by me fishing would have hindered what he was doing. So whilst I was with him, and it was any weather, we'd be sat there in the rain, we'd be sat there in the snow, we would go any weather. And then, again, a natural progression, I started fishing there once I felt, or my dad felt, that I was competent enough to fish there. Okay. So he never let me just go straight out and do it. It was always like, when you're ready, chuck your rods out. And it's like anything. And looking back now, sometimes you can try too hard with your fishing and you might get someone turn up next to you, chuck out, and you think, how have you just caught one? But back then at Walthamstow, it was very much like that. The known anglers at the time, and a lot of the anglers that I still know from Walthamstow are very good anglers, and they are within the fishing industry now, because that was quite a good place for sort of carving out certain anglers, because of it sort of moulded the way that they fished and the way that they were. But Dad would never let me just fish until I was ready. And like I said, the first couple of fish I caught from there were good fish. And yeah, I think my first fish was like a 35-pounder.
Oh, blimey.
But back then was a massive fish.
That's huge, yeah.
Yeah, but that's sort of how I got into it, and then how I progressed. But then, like I say, the real progression came when Dad fished the BCAC, the British Carp Angling Championship. Because fishing the competition scene, as you know, back a while ago was a good way of being recognised. If you wanted to make your stamp on angling, you would put yourself out there against the best of the best, and if you succeeded, people looked. And back then, Dad won the British Championship, which is a very hard thing to win. And as a result of that, he got a sponsorship, and it was always like, Andy's got a son, and then that's where it progressed. But it's like I say to people, I would never sit here and say any different. My dad helped me massively, and because of having my dad in that position, it led me to having advantages. But at the end of the day, you can either sit on them and not do anything, or you can use it to your advantage. You can work hard.
So did you know from that age, though, that I love angling, this is something that I want to do? Or at that point, were you just like,
No.
I'm just fishing?
I'm just fishing. And because my dad is, he's very grounded in what he does, he's like, you need a job, you need a trade, because if you do a trade, you will always earn money. I've never been out of work. I left school when I was 16. I've been self-employed since I was 16, and I've never missed a bill, and I've never not had money, because I've always worked, and that's something that my dad always told me to do. So what I done when I left school, obviously I used to get a bit bullied in school, because it was like, oh, what are you doing this weekend? You're going fishing. You know, oh, you're not coming out.
That sounds familiar.
You know, oh, you're not doing this, or you're not doing that. And I can get that, you know, and everybody's different. And you know what? I've got thick skin, and I just took it on the chin, or the chin, so to speak, and I just got on with life. And yeah, it was, I never thought it would get to the point it's at now, but my dad always said to me, I don't care what you do with your life, I want you to go to college and I want you to get a trade. So I went to college, trained to be an electrician, got my full qualification, and I was sparking for probably 6 years.
But during that time, you're also starting to get recognised on the angling scene.
Yeah, so by that time, obviously things had progressed. I mean, I'm obviously sponsored by Fox and Sticky. I've been with Fox since I was 15. So I'm now 31, so I've been with them for 16 years, which is a long time.
And when did you start doing the BYCAC, so the junior equivalent of what your dad won?
So I would have been probably 14, I reckon I would have been.
That's actually a lot later than I expected.
I think it was 14. It may have been 13, but the first one that I ever fished was on Oxley's.
I'm surprised it was that. I was third when I was 12.
Yeah,
I started when I was 8.
I'm sure it was, yeah, without having it all written down, but I'm sure the first one I fished was on Oxley's.
Yeah.
And I never qualified. And then after that, I fished 3 other events, 2 on Brasenose 1 and 1 on Thorpe Lee.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
And I won every single qualifier, and I come second twice and a third or a fourth, I believe. I never won. I was very close to winning, but
yeah, that eats me up as well a little bit.
But it's like anything. It's not always about. I always say to people, it's not about winning, or it's not about being a one-hit wonder. It's consistency. In my opinion, someone that's consistent is better than somebody that's just won a fluke. And so I'm glad in a way that, not saying I didn't want to win it, because obviously I did want to win it, because back at then it was a massive thing to win. The juniors was a big thing.
Yeah.
But I wasn't gutted that I didn't win it. So it sort of, in a way I think that helped me, because I was consistent through the years. Then at the same time I was fishing out, I fished in the adults one with my dad, partnering with my dad, and I think I was the youngest ever finalist. I'm not sure if I still am to this day, but I think I was 14, and we got a podium as well. So that was a good thing, and it meant I got to fish with my dad as well. But then that's sort of what helped, and then you know, again, being in the situations where you're fortunate enough to fish certain places, and you meet the right people. But these are all just fortunate circumstances. They're not places that I've deliberately put myself in. They're fortunate circumstances that I've just been in. But it's like anything. You could be with 100 people that are successful, or 100 people that can get you into the right place. But you still have to have that want to do it, and the love. And I think that's the biggest thing. When people talk to me about fishing now, I liken it to like I feel it's how I would be if I took drugs. I'm addicted to fishing. I know it might sound mad to people, and they might think, now what are you going on about? But I'll be sitting at home at night, and I'll hear the rain beating against the window, and I'll pull my phone out.
No, I think a lot of the listeners of this
and it's
will be fully aware of what you're thinking.
Well, it's 12 degrees tonight, and the air pressure's dropping. And I can go. I'm fortunate now that I can go, but I used to do that when I used to live back at home, because I used to go and do overnighters between work, obviously once I'd passed my driving test. But again, another fortunate situation is the guy that I was working with when I was doing my sparkying was a carp angler. So it was I was like, Matt, the weather's good. It's Friday. Can I leave a bit earlier? Yeah, of course you can. But then, but because I wasn't into the whole going out scene, and I didn't get caught up in all of that. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and make out like I want people to feel sorry for me that I didn't have a life, but I didn't have anything else to do. I could go home, sit in our family home, which granted is, I would do it every day of the week. But if I would come home from work at, say, 4 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, and it doesn't get dark till 8 o'clock, when you're living at home, you've got disposable income, you're putting it in your car, and you're going fishing. And I used to have my little red 306. I used to have it loaded up, and I used to drive it.
I actually remember that when I used to love that car. I remember seeing that in the car park at B2 actually once, when I was proper
That was a hell of a car. 1.9 turbo diesel, the red Peril. That was a beast of a car. And I used to load it up. I used to have everything was in its place. And I used to go and I used to fish from, say, 7 in the evening and pack up at 5 in the morning. But obviously, because all of this was before social media days, none of this was ever seen. So it's having the extra want, I think, to do something. But like I say, all the while this is going on, I never expected to earn enough money out of it to make it a living.
But this is where I want to get to. So the thing is, having a trade these days is probably one of the most strong median paying jobs you can have. Yeah. It's the joke, is it? You never see a poor Sparky. And that means that it only makes that challenge of taking your hobby, what you want, a little bit more difficult. It's like my guest on here last week, he customizes trainers on the side, and he does amazing with it. And to most people, what he earns out of that is more than the average kind of salary in the UK just on the side. But because he's got such a high paying day job, it's really hard for him to find the balance to take that other thing full time. But I feel like when you've got that trade and then you're trying to get into angling, that must have been really difficult. So when was the first, because there's many anglers out there that are sponsored or have trade deals or something like that, or let's say you have 20% off and you're with that company, but you were fully sponsored, you're getting all your kit necessarily for free, and in return you're doing content for the fishing companies and you're building up the relationship. But that is very different to being a paid consultant. So when did a little flick switch to say that, okay, I can earn money out of this? And then the other question is obviously a big part of, say, that initial income, I think, of when you took angling more full-time was tuition. So I think that's probably a good question.
Yeah. I think, obviously, it started off with, bearing in mind, and I will just say this, obviously people will be looking and thinking, it's all right, you get all your gear free. Even though tackle is supplied, I don't own the tackle.
Okay.
The tackle is supplied by the companies that sponsor me, and I'm there to show that tackle off, which that's what I'm there to do.
And test.
And test, which I do a lot of testing. But all of the tackle that's been given to me, I don't drive around like, look at all this, my tackle that I've got. That's what's supplied by the company that sponsor me.
Okay, that's interesting.
So obviously it started off as just a sponsorship where you get your tackle, and then it's like things just progress, and then you've been with a company a certain length of time. So, you've shown loyalty to the company. So then the company invests a bit of money back into you as a person, as an ambassador, as someone that they want to represent their company.
And is that triggered naturally, or is that, do you think, also triggered by other companies starting to
I think the biggest thing my biggest thing that I never done, and this was always said to me by the people who at the time were working at the company, it was, I never promised anything. Because if you promise something, you have to deliver that promise. If someone's working for me and they promise that, or they say, I can do this, this, and this by the end of the year, straight away they've put themselves under pressure. And I'm not sitting here now and I'm saying that I couldn't earn more money doing sparkying. But what I like in my life is I don't like pressure. I like to just have a nice chilled life. I like to just get up in the morning. You know, I've worked hard to get to where I've got to, but I don't have people breathing down my neck to deliver and to have pressure to deliver. And I think that's what a lot of people do now is they put a lot of pressure on themselves.
And maybe that's the difference between the anglers that say work for the companies and have a specific role in that business. Potentially that's a more pressured way of being in the angling industry than kind of you're more of the marketing side, I'd say, of going fishing.
Yeah, I always see myself as like an on the bank sales rep.
And,
you know?
An on the bank influencer.
Yeah, like
as well.
I have as much time in the world for other people when they're on the bank. Look at the places that I fish. They're busy places. I fish them because I enjoy them, and the people that I interact with are the people that support me.
But to take angling full time,
yeah,
there was 3 things for you, which I guess is fishing companies consultancy,
yeah,
tuitions, which is a great way of boosting all that up, and on top of that, there's other little areas around, say whether it's magazine articles and all the rest of it that can top it up.
But
so what does your pie chart look like of how did you?
But there's also
like the bits that make it up.
There's also a big part of it that not many people see because I choose to keep it off of my social media, which is my personal life. So at the time, I was in a more fortunate position where I didn't have to earn as much money to be able to live. But because I don't speak about that, and I will never speak about that, people will never know. People don't need to know how much money I need to live because I don't want to know how much other people need to live. It's none of their. It's no one's business. So I was in a position where I was able to pursue something that might not have worked. I'm not. There was no guarantee that this was ever going to work. But at the time, I was in a position, and I was able to invest more time to doing what I wanted to do, which was to go fishing more, which then meant doing the tutorials. At the same time, I was obviously having a small income coming in as well, but I was also still doing work as well. Like if I have to work 7 days a week, I'll work 7 days a week.
A total mixture then. It's like, okay, angling's doing X and it looks like it's growing slowly, but I'm still going to go and top it up by using me trade and all the rest of it.
Yeah, which is what I've always done. But I was in a where I'm like, obviously I had a baby when I was quite young. I was 23, I think 24, but the progression of where I moved to and how things panned out, I am grateful for the people that were around me and are around me because I was able to have a cheaper way of life to be able to invest more time into doing what I'm doing now. Yeah. So that's a massive factor into it.
Because tuitions are as well, if you're doing those, you're paid for your time. So
yeah,
the bank, essentially.
And I done a couple of years of tutorials, and but that's what helped me be out on the bank more, meant that I could still provide for my family, and at the same time I was going more to increase my chances of being able to further myself within the fishing world. But even at that point, and by that time I'm like mid-20s, I still never thought, I wonder if one day I'll be able to wake up on a Monday and just go fishing for the whole week and then pack up on a Thursday or a Friday. But because I still never expected it to ever happen, because you don't. And
what needed to click for that to happen?
I think what needed to click was the fact that I had enough income to look at my accounts and think, you know what, I can live on that and I can see a potential growth in the future. And I think it's also building good relationships with companies, good relationships with fisheries, and also in the modern days is having a good social media following, because you can be the best at something in the world, and I watch a lot of YouTube videos and I watch a lot of certain videos, and if you haven't got a following or people are looking at you and they're thinking, I mean, granted, when if you're going to put yourself out there, people are going to troll you, they're going to be nasty. I've had my fair share of it. My skin's only got thicker. Yes, some days I have sat there, mate, and I've put my head in my hands and I used to think, what on earth is going on? Why are people saying this? But if you've got a loyal following, you log on to, say, Instagram or Facebook in the morning, you get a really nice message saying, mate, your tips here have helped me do this, this and this. To me, that's a massive buzz. That's better than earning £100,000 to me.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever earned 100 grand, but I'm just saying that's better than any of that because somebody's telling me that what I've shown them or what I've said, they've listened.
But there's two parts to success and being able to be in a position that you want to be in. And a lot of people do associate that with cash and money. However, I think definitely in this industry and probably a few other different sports, that if people were able to earn a living off their main hobby, that is literally the dream. Whatever value that kind of comes off of it, if they can survive off their hobby, but then that is...
It's having a hobby and then turning it into a job. You still have to you then have to treat it as a job, but still love it like a hobby, if that makes sense. Because it's very easy to go fishing every weekend, and people, I can fish 7 days a week if I wanted to, but I can't fish 7 days a week because you could burn yourself out. So now how I treat my fishing is that when I leave my house to go fishing, it's a job. I'm getting paid from the second I leave my house to when I come home. Even though the way that it works, it means that I'm not just getting paid for the time I'm away, but I treat it as a job because it gives me the drive to constantly want to do it. And the problem is, and especially with today's world, this is not just for angling, is that it can be very easy to be in a position and become very lapsed with it and think, do you know what? I'll go next week. Nah, don't worry about it. I'll go next
like the
week.
gym.
And yeah, and then I've missed a few days at the gym. But you know what I'm saying? It's very easy to get into something and then all of a sudden think, I won't bother with it. I won't bother next week. Or, I've got 20 messages to answer on Instagram. I'll do them tomorrow. It's having the want to constantly do it. And I think that with the way that my fishing works is that I love it. I'm addicted to going, but I also respect that it's my job. And I also respect the people that pay my wages. And I think that's the biggest thing that keeps me going is the fact that I treat it as a job, but I still love it like a hobby.
Are you baffled? Because it does baffle me a little bit. I wouldn't say maybe baffled is the wrong word. I find it quite incredible that golf has the ability to turn some golfers into multi-millionaires, and yet fishing has a similar amount of people that go, especially in the angling industry.
No comment.
Is that something that frustrates you?
I think fishing is a way of life, for me anyway. Like, that money's what makes the world go round. Everybody wants to earn money. Everyone wants to earn more money. Within fishing, there is ways in which you can do that. But I love what I do. And I think when you look at like golf and stuff, like I don't enter the competition side of things. So I'm not putting myself out there to win money. But I know what you're saying in regards to if you enter a golf tournament, you could win £5 million. But fishing... I mean,
so how is it? Do you think it will get to that stage?
I mean, you look at bass fishing over in America, and they pull up the person's name, sponsors, Kellogg's, BP Oil, career earnings, millions. Granted, everything that's done in America is on a bigger scale, but in the future, you don't know what's going to ever happen. So, I think I'm not going to try and run before I can walk because no angler is bigger than any of the companies that sponsor them. So. You might think in your own head like, well, I fished for England. He plays football for England. He gets £150,000 a week. Why don't I? You can't compare it. You can't compare fishing to another sport personally. And I know what you're saying. Like, yeah, golfers get this and whatever, but
golf is is kind of the same wherever it is on the earth as well as the other difference.
Do I think it will get to that stage? I mean. Obviously, if it was more like I feel with other sports, they're more televised. Like look at darts, look at the crowd it draws. Look. The thing is with fishing is because it's such a hobby that's done over a long period of time. It's engaging the public's interest in it. A game of darts, you can get dressed up, you can wear what you want, you can have a few drinks, and you can just go and watch and play a few games of darts. It's massive. The same as golf. You can watch and play golf. It's done and dusted in a couple of days. Fishing can be quite a long job or a long hobby, and I think the thing with fishing is a lot of it is people are getting away from the real world and they're just going to relax. But mate, if it never got to that stage, it would never bother me. Like I will not I could die in 20, 30 years' time.
You're just rolling along.
And I'll never regret any of the decisions I've ever made because I've met so many good people along the way. And what I like about fishing, probably the biggest thing I like about fishing is you could be anywhere in the world, right? And if someone has got a green coat on or a fishing branded jacket on, you'd be like, all right, mate. It doesn't matter. I've never met them. And I fish next to some proper characters in my time. And I fish next to some very successful, very wealthy people. But you all sit down in the mud, have a coffee out of a cup that hasn't been washed up for 6 weeks, and you all chat. And what I love most about fishing is it brings such a diverse amount of people
on the bank.
And that's what I love about it. Whereas when you watch other hobbies and sports, there's a divide. The people that play it, the people that do it,
polo,
are separate to the people that watch it and the people that support it. Whereas with fishing, you could be the best known angler in the world, but you're fishing places where everybody can fish. And I love it because I can speak to everybody, I can interact with everybody, and I could have somebody next to me that's having a real hard time, and I could have somebody next to me that's majorly successful. But you can put the kettle on and everybody's the same. And I think that's what I love.
So, I would say the next question, because there's no doubt going to be a lot of young anglers, potentially haven't even passed their test yet, listening to this, thinking, that's what I want to do. I just want to do fishing. What have they got to do? Because there's not actually as many comps these days that make it as easy, and there's so many fishermen.
There is, and I get a lot of messages across social saying, how do you get to where you've got? My best advice to anybody is do not go at it hammer and tong and not have a backup plan. Because the one thing my dad said to me is, get yourself a trade. You know, if you want to get into fishing, go to college, get yourself a trade, plod along, do your fishing, enjoy it, put yourself out there, film. This is another thing. A lot of the juniors, certainly back a few years ago, used to do the videos, YouTube vlogs, whatever. With the way that the modern world works is, they would film a video, they would get negative comments, they would stop doing it.
Yeah.
Now, it's easy for me to say now, having lived through a lot of negative comments, to be like, just ignore it. But some days you can have 1,000 nice comments, but that one negative comment, you're driving around thinking, I want to ring that person, I want to speak to them, I want to know why they've said it. But now I just ignore it. I'll like the comment. What I'll always do is if someone puts a negative comment on my stuff, I'll like it because they know I've acknowledged it. I've read it, I've taken it on board, but I'm not bothered by it. But a lot of the young'uns, and it's sad to see, you know, and I want to try to support them as much as I can. Go out and film yourself. You know, you might not.
I think Carl and Alex is the best.
Yeah, they're a prime example.
That,
but they carried on soldiering through.
They pushed through.
And
they used to
now
get
look,
absolutely trolled.
I've never met either of those two. But in terms of people that you would have to aspire that have done their own thing and have made a massive success of it, them two are the pinnacle of that, you know. And I watch what they do on social media, as I'm sure they might have followed me. I'd be honoured if they did follow me. But what they now do to like the youngsters and how they support them, because obviously they've never forgotten how they've got to where they've got, which is why I never want to forget, which is why I still fish the places that I do. Mate, you could get to a position where you feel you're above fishing busy places anymore, you know. But I love fishing them places because without the busy fisheries that I fish and the amount of people that I interact with, I feel in myself that I wouldn't get the support. And like I always put on any post, you know, always around like a Christmas time or, you know, like a nice post out, if I ever say thank you, I will always highlight how much I'm grateful for every single person that watches, whether that's a positive watch or a negative watch. I'm always grateful. And I think that's the biggest thing is, if you're going to go out on your own and you're getting into fishing and you're a youngster, is take what the negative people say with a pinch of salt, but the people that are writing nice stuff about you, interact with them, speak with them, you know, and carry on doing it, because mate, it's fishing at the end of the day. There's no right or wrong. I still go fishing now and I'm like, bloody hell, I've just fished like an absolute idiot. But like, that's just how life is. No one, you're never going to be perfect in this. It's like in all walks of life. If you're a football player, you could play an amazing game one week. The following week you can go, and it's like you're trying to kick an egg around the field. You know what you're doing. You know, and that's how fishing is. You can't get yourself beaten up over it. And another thing I would say, another good bit of advice is don't put too much pressure on yourself, because at the end of the day, no matter what we've got available to us and how good we potentially believe we are, or how good we've become over the years, you are trying to catch a wild animal. Granted, people would be like, yeah, but the lakes you fish, the fish are just penned up and they can't go nowhere. They can't go nowhere. But you know what? One day I fancy something to eat. The next day I wake up and think, I'm not hungry today. And you can't catch a fish, no matter how many there are, if the fish are not hungry. So if you're putting pressure on yourself to deliver, and say you're saying, I can catch you 15, 30 pounders by the end of the year, but you don't deliver that, in your head you're like, oh God, I've told them I'm going to do this, but I've not delivered it. So then you're pressuring yourself. So I've never put any of that on myself. I'm like, I am me. I go fishing. I love fishing. I do my social media, which is part of my job, so to speak. And what will be, will be. And the companies, you know, they're not, I know a lot of the people within the fishing industry, they're all proper sound. They understand that, like, you can't go fishing every week and catch what you're telling them you're going to catch, because they're all real people. You know, they're not fake people. They're all real people. And I think, like I say, that's the biggest thing, is don't put any pressure on yourself, but go into it with a backup plan.
Were you surprised, taking it back a bit? Because I'd like to cover this one, because I think the tutorials must have been a massive part of helping allow you to spend more time fishing on the bank. You're being paid to be on the bank with somebody and show them your skills and try and transfer it so they can be better at angling.
Yeah.
And it's definitely working well, trying to say, oh, well, fishing doesn't pay that well for me. But back in the day, when you were really smashing the tutorials, what was one night fishing on the bank?
So what, in terms of what I would charge?
Yeah.
So they used to be I used to do £250 for 24 hours.
Okay.
And a lot of people
like a day rate.
A lot of people are like, oh my God, just so much money. But you take your tax off of that. You take your travel off of that. You take your food off of that. I was buying the ticket for them. You're at someone's beck and call for 24 hours. When you equate all of the loss, like all of the things that you've had to take out to earn that sort of money, working on a 24-hour rate, you're only probably earning about £8 an hour.
I thought it was more than that.
You know, probably even less than that. You're probably taking home, if you charge £250, you're probably taking home, say, 160, so about £8 per hour. But you're constantly away, and what a lot of it is as well is you're away from home. So I'm away from home for a set period of time. Obviously, I've got a family, and when you're away for a period of time, you miss things, and you miss certain things that money can't buy. Obviously, seeing little and growing up, but I've sacrificed that to now. Hopefully, I hope it is, I'm in a good position, which is why I don't ever want people to, you know, I speak to people and they're like, oh, you must be loving it, you must be raking it in, and I'm like, what's raking it in? I work hard. Granted, I just go fishing, but I've had to do a lot of stuff to get to that position. And there's people coming through the ranks all the time. You know, you don't just get to a certain position in life and take your foot off the pedal, because there's always people.
Finley Todd, and I see a lad that I used to fish with.
I know Finn really well.
He's doing brilliant.
And I also know a lot of people within the fishing industry that I've grown up with. You know, like Lewis Porter is a prime example. I love Lewis to bits. He's one of my really close friends. I've worked with Lewis for probably 16, 18 years.
It's a long time.
But his progression from where he's come from and where he's got to is... But Lewis doesn't stop working hard, because he wants to maintain the position he's in and be the person that he is. And it's no different to my fishing, is in the sense that I go fishing a lot. I see a lot of up-and-coming young anglers, a lot of up-and-coming talent. And I look at them and I support them, but at the same time, you have to look at them and think, well, if I take my foot off the pedal here, you could take my position. People might not ever think that would happen, but
it's no different to football players.
Yeah, but years ago, a lot of the people in the fishing trade might not have thought, oh, Tom will ever do anything from fishing. But you can't look at anybody and think that they're not going to replace you, because nobody is everybody is replaceable when it comes to a position.
With your tutorials, did you put yourself out there for that, or did people start approaching you?
So I'd had a couple of messages, but it's always like, I never wanted to be like that person that thought that I was good enough to charge somebody to fish with me. And obviously, age has been against me up until I've got to, I would say, over 30. Really, I know it's only been a year and a bit, but a lot of the people are like, well, what does he know? He's only young. So I never put myself out there because I thought, you know what? Maybe they are right. What do I know? I am only young. But if people had approached me and they said, do you do tutorials? You know, at the time, I'd spoke to the other guys that did do tutorials. I found out what they were charging, and I went in with the same price because I'm not a bad person. I could have undercut and done loads, but I didn't. I done it at the same price. So no one could ever argue with that. And whether that hindered the amount of bookings I got, I don't know, or whatever. But I've never solely relied on tutorials being my main source of income, which is why now I'm a lot more, not a lot more selective in how many I do, but the way that my schedule is made up, I can only do X amount per year.
Did you have a waiting list for them or anything?
I obviously get a lot of people message about them. Not so much a waiting list because I don't want to give someone any false hope. I don't want to say, mate, I can do one for you in May 2024 because it might come to May 2024 and I've got a little one. When you've got a little one, anything can change. You know, 1 minute I could be away fishing. The next minute you could get a call from school, little one's poorly, can you come and pick her up? I know it doesn't happen every week, but if you've booked something up with somebody and that happens, you've then got to let that person down. And that person's had to have a day off work, he's had to do whatever to get around it. So I try not to book as much stuff in. With the way that it works with, say, my filming and stuff like that, is I have X amount of dates that get sent through. But with the way that the industry is they are flexible. So if things need to change, at the end of the day, a lot of the people that I work with have got children. They have got a life. They understand. It's no different to any walk of life. People understand if something's gone wrong and you can't commit to something, you need to change it. But it's easier to change something with a big company that can do something else on the day rather than changing something with an individual.
That's quite interesting.
That has waited the whole year to fish with you.
Yeah.
Because Sod's Law says you could have one thing go wrong in a year, but it will be on that one day that person has messaged you every day of the week leading up to it. Mate, I'm so excited. And on the morning of, something happens. So I don't necessarily have a waiting list for them. But
luck of the draw. If
people message me and they say, do you have any dates available? And I'm like, it's looking good that I could potentially do this, or this, then I will still be available. And I've also gone and done some group ones this year, which are better. They've had a much better response. But again, like, I'm not doing these tutorials because I feel like I know everything, because I don't. You know, I'm just a normal lad that goes fishing that just ended up in a bit of a fortunate position. And it's like anything, I just roll in with it.
But you do catch some carp.
Yeah, but then it's like I say to people, there is no substitute for time. And I have this argument with a lot of people on the bank because they'll say, oh, you catch so many fish. And I'm like, take me to work with you for the day. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, say if you're a plumber, take me to work with you, open the back of that van and say to me, right, go and change that boiler. I wouldn't know what to do. But because I'm fishing all the time, I'm around all the time. So I'm seeing what's going on. I'm building a picture of the lake. I'm building a picture of what's coming out. I'm there at the best times of the week. So I try to say to people, don't compare what you're doing.
And you've probably got a lot of knowledge going on your phone as well.
Yeah,
like
and a lot of people,
you can track it.
Yeah,
it's your job.
A lot of people messaging me, you know, hi mate, I'm in this peg on this lake. You know, and then it's like, you chat to them, because I will chat to anyone on, you know, granted I miss a few messages on social media. Sometimes you get in, like, some nights I could get, say, 50 or 80 messages, and it's impossible to answer them all. But you're chatting to people, so you're building a picture of what's happening around a lake. Whereas if a person's coming away to fish because they want to relax, I say to them, don't compare anything. The thing with fishing is you cannot compare yourself to the next person. Like, I've never done that in life anyway. I've never looked. I'm not jealous of anybody in my life. I'm envious. And there's two different things. If you're jealous of someone, you become hateful towards them. If you're envious, I think it makes you strive to be a better person, because you think, well, he's done that. I wonder if I had to do that, I could do that as well. You know, and that's what I say to people: don't compare what I catch. Like, yeah, it's lovely. I go fishing and I catch fish, and it's that's what I'm there to do, and that's what I enjoy doing. But if you're having a hard week, everybody has different personal situations. So some people might be going away to relax from fishing because they're having a bad time at home. Other people might be going fishing because they've got have had a bad week at work. Everybody's different. So the one thing I say is don't ever compare. There is no substitute for time, and I've always highlighted that. And time is the biggest thing. If you're there if you're there more than anybody else, you should catch more than anybody else. That's the way I look at it, and I think it's a pretty.
And as you said about sacrifice before, if you've spent that much time on the bank, what would you say has been the hardest? Has there been a moment where you're like, I'm going to jack all this in?
Yeah, a couple, but I and again, I don't talk about it because I'm quite a personal person. I mean, I still speak to people now, and then they're like,
but it's not all been plain sailing.
No,
there has been points where you're like, I can't do this
there's
anymore.
been points in my life where I've sat there and had my head in my hands and think, what am I doing? There's been points in my life where I thought, I'm just going to drive to someone's house and I'm going to stab it out with them. And I'm not like that, and I wouldn't ever do it. It's just you think it in your head, and I'm not I don't have like a suicidal person or anything like that. But sometimes you think like, wow, there's an example this week. I'm not going to say where I've been this week, but I walked around the lake, come back, and someone had spat down the side of my van. And it's like, wow, we're going fishing. We're sat round the lake with a load of fish that can't get out, and we're all sitting there. We catch one, we photograph it, and we put it back. But someone has felt the need to drive past my van and spit down it. But you can take it two ways. You can either let it beat yourself up about it, send it off for DNA test and try and find out who done it, and give them the satisfaction that they want. Or you can look at it and think, whoever's done that has got that much hate up inside them with everything that's going on in the world. Because let's be honest, it's a pretty mad world at the minute, and they've got that much hate that they've driven past my van, and I know how it would have happened because of the way that the direction of it was on the van. I'm not stupid. They would have driven round the corner. They would have seen my van with the plate on it. They'd have been like, and I can guarantee you the words that come out of their mouth were, "That's Maker's van. I can't stand him," and they just spat down the side of it and drove out. And I'm not bothered by that because things like that now make me want to do it more because if I know I'm getting to somebody and I'm annoying them, I'll keep doing it. It's no different to say if you're at home with a missus or whatever and you're annoying her. If she's retaliating, keep doing it because it's getting to her.
And then there's the point though where I wish I hadn't kept retaliating.
And then you think, well, I shouldn't have done that anymore, which that would probably result in me getting filled in. But it's never happened. I've had so many threats come through social media.
Yeah.
I'm not just talking at me as an angler. The other sponsored anglers within fishing. I look at what happens within football.
Daryl's van.
I look at what happens in football and stuff, and I think, you know what? I go fishing, and I get a couple of negative people comment. You look at these footballers and what they get. It's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. And but in this day and age, what's even worse is that someone can troll you online. They can say the most horrible things, and that could lead to a person committing suicide. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
And at the end of the day, you are just going to be another statistic on the side of a motorway bridge with a plaque. The person that's led you to do that will just go and do it to the next person.
But I do think what's quite nice about Pacific Industries, I think industries are very obviously different and the types of people that make them up. And what I would say about definitely the angling industry from being involved in it, and look, I think I've been fishing once in the last 12 months, if not maybe twice. I just don't really go much anymore, but it's weird because when I do, I absolutely flipping love it.
Yeah.
But whether it's work or excuses, I don't know. I just don't end up getting out. But what I will say is I've just put out my first lake building videos, and obviously I had no idea that they get the response that they got and the level of views, etc.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for it. I was almost smiling because I was like, amazing comment. Like, wow, this is just insane. 99.9% positive feedback on the video. I was like, this just doesn't happen on YouTube. No. Not from what I've seen. No. And you think back to when I was growing up watching lads similar age to me, Carl and Alex, getting absolutely charged. You think, wow, this just doesn't happen. But I was like, there will be one. One will come along.
Yeah, and one did on Facebook. Say as
and he said, well, no, it is one. Because there wasn't really any angle he could have come at the way I'd done the video.
Yeah.
I kind of closed everything off that I thought was a problem. And he said, you bought all the views, all the likes and everything else on the video. I'm like, mate, there's 2,000 comments underneath.
Yeah, but I get that.
Why would I? I've got a video next to it that's done 800 views. Like, why would I buy 80,000 views on this? Like, I've got no
but mate,
need to.
You get it with the fishing videos, is that it's pre-baited. You've had a peg close. Like, granted, when we're going to do filming projects, we are there to do a job. So the peg will be reserved.
But the anglers, my point was, the anglers underneath that negative comment, you must see as well. I mean, people, Lewis, your rate was straight on him. What was amazing is I didn't even get involved in it.
No.
Yet this string of people that I don't even really know
because you build
were fighting my corner.
Yeah, because you have a loyal following. But what you generally tend to find that happens is, and I found this a lot, say if I do a vlog and it gets 50,000 views, or you do a big video on, say, the Fox or the Sticky page, and you're upwards of 100,000 views, 100,000 people have watched that, right? There might be 65 comments. But yet you could go fishing for the next 5 years and everybody would say, mate, a brilliant video, what you've done. But it's only the people that want to write negatives that will take the time to comment. All the people that are, what I look at now in terms of support is the viewing figures rather than the comments. Because it's lovely when people comment positive stuff, and I am forever grateful for all of the people that do. But if you're getting 100,000 views on something, but you're only getting 25 comments, and 5 of which are negative, them 100,000 views is enough for me to think, you know what, fair play. There's a lot of people watching this,
it's
and I appreciate that. But what always baffles me, and I think it probably baffles a lot of people, is that like I said before about being jealous and about being envious. I see people on TV all the time. You know, I would love nothing more than to have a nice car. I've always wanted a nice car. I will get there in the end because I know what my end target is of what I would like to achieve.
Yeah.
You know, no one needs to know what it is, but I know what it is. But yeah,
So that's interesting though, because when you started fishing, there was no end target of what you wanted to achieve because you were just going angling.
Yeah.
And it's taken 12 years to say, I suppose along that journey, maybe 26 onwards, do you think, when you start thinking, have you had like little plans in your head? Like, this is the next bit to get to, whether it be my bait or my earnings or my tuitions or whatever. Because that sounds to me like you start to formulate a plan now on your angling career of how to get to the next
You need to
step.
see where something pans out. And I don't think it's any different to say if I was still sparkying and I'd been doing it for, say, 12 or 14 years now, and I'm working for somebody else, and I think, well, I wonder if I was to just take the leap and do it on my own, you know. And fishing, obviously, like, I've taken the leap and I've gone on my own because I'm self-employed. But I think the world is evolving so quickly. Like, you think when I first started carp fishing, there wasn't even Facebook or Instagram. Whereas now, you're looking back thinking, what the hell did we do before Facebook and Instagram? And everybody that's watching this will all have the same addiction. The first thing you do in the morning is you wake up and you scroll through social media. And if you don't do that in the morning, you've probably got a pretty cool life. But at the end of the day, everyone will wake up in the morning and they will pick the phone up. You do, didn't you? You got a notification. Oh, what's so-and-so done? What's so-and-so done? And I see something on, it was like something, again, shared on Facebook, social media. And it was like, I think it was on like a Banksy post or something like that. And there was a woman looking at her phone, and then there was her husband looking at her phone, but it was like he was sat on top of the globe. And it was like mobile phones. They bring you closer to people that are furthest away, but they push you furthest away from people that you're closest to. And it is the truest saying ever.
Yeah, my dog.
Yeah, I could say.
I feel so bad for my dog and my mum sometimes when I'm working, and it could just be working to me. Because
you're like this all the time.
Yeah, you are. And then you look at other people that like it, you say, I don't want that to be me.
Yeah.
But we do naturally get caught up in it.
You could turn around and you could say to mum, oh, mum, you're never going to believe what so-and-so's done. And she's like, oh, what, so-and-so that's over in Australia. And you'd be like, yeah, look at this, what they've done. But you'd be going to bed and you'd be thinking, I didn't even ask mum what she had for tea tonight. And you know what I mean? Like, you're more, the social media, people are more engrossed with what other people are doing like across the other side of the world than what they're doing themselves. And I think that it doesn't just go for fishing, but it goes for anything. If the more you focus on yourself, the better it is. Now, I'm no life coach. Do you know what I mean? I'm never going to be no motivational speaker. I only ever talk about the things that I do. But probably the single biggest thing that I do and that I will always do is I will never upload photographs of my personal life on my social. People follow me because I go fishing. People follow me because I drink cherry Coke and that I'm unhealthy. People do not follow me because they want to see that I've taken my little girl out. or that I've taken my missus out, or that I've gone to a nice place to have a meal. And I also think as well with social media is that you could get paid Friday. By the time all your bills and everything come out by Sunday, you're portioning out your money that you've got, and you know you've only got X amount to spend. And in your head, you're like, oh my God, my life is a mess. It's not, because you're doing great, you're doing brilliant for your life. But you can log on to social media and you can look at somebody and you can think, I wonder if my missus feels let down by what I've done. But you can't think like that, which is why I don't post nothing like that online. Because I think the biggest thing is to focus on yourself and not worry about others. And like I say, I'm no motivational speaker. I'm just a normal human that has wound up in a very fortunate position, and a lot of people that I'm forever grateful for that have got me to where I am. But in order to maintain anything, you've got to still work hard. And what I don't do is I don't focus my life on somebody else's. I set myself a goal of my goal prior to now wanting a nice car was to get a van. So every time I sit in my van, to most people I say transit van, but to me, I've worked hard to sit in that van, and I can drive to fishing, and I'm like, I've worked hard to get this van, and that's a big thing for me. It's not a supercar. I'm not coming out of a 10-bedroom mansion. I won't probably never get to that stage in my life. If it happens, it happens. And if it does happen, bloody hell, it'll be amazing. But I can sit in my van and I can come back from there, or I can be at fishing. I think, I fancy a McDonald's breakfast. I can go and get a McDonald's breakfast. They're only small things, but they're relatable to a lot of people. I don't want massive things. But to me, to get in my transit van and drive up in my nice, new, smelly, lovely van, I'm like, I've worked really hard to get that. So like I say, to a lot of people,
But it's also pretty amazing that the industry has provided that, because going back years and years, you'd think that was unbelievably hard to obtain. So I'd say on the last bits to kind of touch on is those lads that are coming through now, how much of an important part of, if somebody wanted to say, I'm going to have a go at this, I'm going to go for it for a few years, I want to get in that angling world. Do you think now the key to that is YouTube? And do you think you should have started that when you were younger?
Yeah, it seems now that it's more social media. I mean, diverting slightly away from it, you've only got to, certainly having a little, and you watch these young kids on YouTube, millions of subscribers. Now, in terms of fishing, the only people that have really made it like that is Carl and Alex. But that doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity for other people to make that. So if...
And in my view, the reason that they have made it like that is because they realise, well, if we don't make
they started
production grade videos, they practiced all the way young.
Yeah.
But if we don't make TV production grade storyline videos, which is what people like, we're not going to be in the mix.
No.
So it was also identifying, I think, the fact that that's what you've got to do.
But what they also
grow that.
What they also do, which is like I've said, like I touched on before about having the want to carry on going, they update and provide regular content. And nothing, in my opinion, is more appealing to somebody than somebody that's relevant, that goes and does something all the time. If I'm watching something on YouTube, whether it be a series, I watch a series on YouTube, basically a guy films himself with his GoPro, paddles around in his boat, and he just island hops and he learns to survive living on an island, right? But he does it every week. So every week you're looking forward to it. I wonder what I've done this week. I wonder what I've done this week. So it's being consistent. But then
100%.
I also appreciate that everybody has personal circumstances that might not allow them to be as consistent as going every week. But the biggest thing I would always say is whatever you do, just go and enjoy it. Enjoy it, put everything you've got into it, and just go with the flow, and what will be is what will be.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure a lot of the subscribers on YouTube that are definitely here for the lake build will probably be the most engaged in this podcast so far. And
it's my first ever podcast as well.
And I think it's amazing. Hopefully some of your guys will come over and check out some of the other stuff that I've been doing, talk to all sorts of people about how to take something that they've done into a career, or how their path led them from X to having the kind of situation that they want to be in now.
The things that people don't necessarily see on a day-to-day video.
Yeah, 100%.
They could watch a video of me fishing, but I always watch videos of certain people. How did they get to that position?
How are they fishing?
And I'm not sitting here like I'm some sort of motivational speaker and a multi-millionaire, which is never going to happen. I'm a normal human being that has got into a fortunate position, and a lot of the reason why I maintain that position is because of the people that watch these videos, and for that I'm always grateful for.
Amazing.
So yeah,
Thanks, Tom.
cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Job's a good one.
Boom.
Probably the easiest one I've ever done.